What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So I've had some viewers ask me about what my favorite HTs are. What radios do I carry? And I'll just say right up front that I'm not a big UHF VHF guy. I mean, I use it, but my primary thing is HF. But I always carry an HT with me when I'm out, in the woods or doing whatever. So today I figured I'd talk about some of my favorite radios, why they're my favorite radios, and a little bit about things that I look for in a handheld radio. All right, so I've got my usual sort of list here, and I'm going to talk both about ham radio and GMRS. So I have 6 radios total I'm going to talk about. 4 are ham and 2 are GMRS. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about some of the features that I personally look for in an HT. Now, keep in mind, this is my own personal preference. You may find that you have different priorities, and these aren't in any particular order. These are just things that came to mind when I thought about what do I look for in a radio. So one of the big ones is like water resistance and durability. Not all my radios are water resistant, but I try not to buy radios that I'm going to carry out in the field that are super fragile. Some of the really high-end stuff can be pretty delicate. I don't want to carry a $700 radio out in the woods and have it start pouring and have it not be waterproof, right? If I drop the thing, is it going to break? Receiver quality. This one can be a little subjective. Now, you can test this objectively. I don't have the equipment to do it. So I'm basing it on my own personal experience. But you want something with a decent receiver, right? I want something that's actually going to pick up signals and isn't going to get overloaded. Charging. Do you need the cradle? Right? Can I charge it via USB? Can I charge it with a 12-volt jack? Right? Those are important. And if it's USB, is it something stupid like USB micro, or is it USB-C? And if it's USB-C, is it USB-C power delivery? Because you're going to see that some of these radios are USB-C charging, but they're not really USB-C charging. They go A to C, right? You can't use a power delivery setup, USB-C to USB-C to charge them. So that's something to consider. Size. I've got some big chonker radios. I don't carry them a lot because they're big and heavy, right? If I'm carrying stuff out in the woods or out in the field, wherever, I generally err on the side of smaller and lighter is better. Screen readability. This one's big. Some of the radios that I have here that I love don't have the easiest screens to read in the sun, and that is something you need to consider. Some of these radios are really, really hard to see in direct sunlight. So that's something you really want to think about is if I'm going to be using this in the direct sun a lot, pay attention to what kind of screen it has. Does it have tuning knobs? So some of these radios have separate knobs to tune channels or change frequencies. Some of them you have to do with the keypad. I personally like tuning knobs. Ease of front panel programming. How easy is it to program this radio from the radio? Or do I need the CPS software? Do I need the programming software to program this thing with any sort of ease? Some of these radios are easier to program than others, but none of them are horrible. Will it do APRS? I like to have APRS on board. I don't need it, but it's something that I like. I do have a MobiLink TNC4 that I could carry if I have a radio that doesn't have native APRS and I want to be able to use it. But again, I don't always use it, so. Will it do any sort of digital voice modes, a D-Star, a C4FM, DMR, any of that kind of stuff? Can it be unlocked to transmit out of band? Now, I'm not saying you should unlock your radios and transmit out of band, but if I'm in an emergency situation and I'm in the woods and I broke my ankle and I happen to hear somebody on an FRS frequency, I'd like to be able to transmit on it. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to transmit on FRS frequencies normally on a ham radio, but if I need to, I like the option to be able to do it. And what can it receive? Some of these radios have crazy wideband receive. They'll receive all sorts of stuff. I mean, I'm talking like from shortwave all the way up through UHF. Some of these radios will only receive one single band. All right, so that's something to consider also. So let's talk about some of the different radios I've got here and why I like them. So I'm going to start with probably my favorite HT there is, and that is the Yaesu FT5DR. I love this radio. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. In fact, it can be infuriating at times. However, this radio has pretty much every feature I could possibly want. All right, so let's talk about some of the things I really like about the FT5 and why I think it's sort of my favorite radio. So it's IP67, right? So this guy, you can drop it in the water. Not going to kill it. It's got a fantastic receiver. If there's one thing you need to know about Yaesu radios is the receivers are insanely good on HF. So like my FTDX10 right there, that thing has ears, man. These things have fantastic receivers. Let me turn this off just in case somebody starts talking. It is wideband receive. And when I say wideband receive, it is nuts. Actually, I'm going to turn it back on real quick and we'll cycle through some of the bands. This thing will receive, it's nuts. All right, it will do, it's not going to do, I'd have to go into the VFO, airband, right, VHF, UHF, AM, short band, or shortwave, I'm sorry. Like I said, airband stuff. It'll do shortwave radio. I can listen to like 80 meters ham on this thing. It's insane the stuff this will receive. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. This radio will receive insane amounts of stuff. All right. It's got built-in GPS, built-in APRS. It has a separate tuning knob and volume knob. It's set from the factory so that this is volume and this is tuning. I reverse it so that this is volume and this is tuning. You can do that from in the menu. I like this one on top to be volume because it's easier to access. And if I bump it, it doesn't change channels. This lower one is stiffer and it's harder to move because it's lower and shorter. So I just swap those. It's got a 12-volt charging port. It takes a 12-volt barrel jack. I can charge this off of 12 volts. I can plug this directly into a 12-volt battery and charge this sucker. Okay? This can be unlocked. Now, it's not as easy as some of the other radios, and this one is not. This one is not Mars modded. But if you pull this little rubber plug out, inside here, there's a little resistor, all right? You pop that resistor off the board and then factory reset the radio, and it will transmit out of band, all right? It's got C4 FM, Wires X, System Fusion, Yaesu's digital voice modes. It's got, the Wires X internet capability stuff. Around here, there are a pile of Yaesu System Fusion repeaters. So I have D-Star radios, I have DMR radios. They don't get used that much because there are no D-Star repeaters here, there are no DMR repeaters here. There are a slew of Yaesu System Fusion repeaters. So that comes in handy. And it's got a band scope. So that's another cool thing about this radio is, if we go back in, we're going to go, right, I can actually pull a band scope up and look for signals. It's pretty neat. Okay, so this radio has a lot of features. Now, it's not the easiest radio to use, all right? There are some drawbacks with this radio. One is price. Now, this has come down in price a lot. They're under $400 now. You can see them, you'll see them like $350, $375, all right? When I bought this, I think it was $450. I've had this for a while, but they're not cheap. The form factor's a little weird. It's got a big, wide, flat back. It's kind of a stubby, fat radio. It's a weird form factor compared to any of the other HTs I have. So it feels a little odd in your hand, all right? Has no keypad other than the buttons here. There's no numeric number pad, anything like that. So doing things like entering text, oh my Lord, if I want to send an APRS message, I've got to go menu, message list, pick a message, hit reply, edit text, and then go in and type on the keyboard here on the screen, T9, all right, in order to get a message typed in or something like that. So that's a pain in the butt. Like I said, screen readability in direct sunlight is not amazing on this. It's readable, but it's not great. And like I said, front panel programming is kind of a pain in the butt. You can do it. You go into the F menu. You can set all of your squelch type from in here. You can set your codes from in here. It's a little bit wonky. And remember, Yaesu loves their menu and deep menu stuff. So you've got your standard menu functions, and then you've got your deep menu. Long press the F, and then you've got a whole bunch of other stuff. So it's a little bit weird. But even with all of that, if I could only have one radio, it would be this radio. This radio does everything I want it to do. And if this was my only radio, I probably would Mars mod it, but it isn't, so it's not. So The second ham radio that I want to talk about, got to find my page, is my other probably favorite HT, and that is the VGC VR-N76. This is an awesome radio. It has a few quirks, and I'll use Doug DeMuro's quirks and features moniker here. It's got some oddball things with it that make it a little bit, there are a couple things about it that I dislike, but all in all, this is a fantastic package. So let's talk about some of the things we like about this. It's IP67, okay? It's USB-C charging, and it is actual USB-C PD charging. This will PD charge, okay? You can go Type-C to Type-C on a power delivery brick, and this will charge. A lot of radios won't. It's legit USB-C. It's got a decent receiver. Now, it is in no way, shape, or form as good as this Yaesu, but it's not bad. It's got built-in GPS. There's your GPS antenna right there. It has APRS. This has a Bluetooth KISS TNC. So I can Bluetooth this to software on my phone and use this as a TNC to send, packet stuff, WinLink, email, whatever. The Bluetooth app on this thing is fantastic on your phone. There's a Bluetooth app that's fantastic. The price is fantastic as well, depending on what you buy, whether you buy the BTEC version of this, the Radiotti version of it, or the VGC version of it. It's going to be someplace between $160 and $180. The dev support is fantastic. The developers of this radio are constantly pushing out firmware updates and giving it new additional features. They've done a really great job, and it's easy to unlock. Unlocking this radio is so stupid easy, it's not even funny to get this thing to transmit out of band. I'm not going to talk about how to do it. You do it from the app. If you want to find out how, you can Google it. It's really simple. But this radio's got a lot going for it. Now, there are some drawbacks. Again, it's a color screen. So the screen readability in the sun is a negative. It's hard to read in the sun. The messaging in the APRS is wonky. It's really, really weird. Typing on this thing is miserable. Even though it's got a T9 pad, it's got a weird keyboard on the screen. Formatting of APRS messages is weird. So if you ever send an APRS message, like let's suppose you want to do WXBot to get your weather, you do WXBot : and then type in your zip code or your town or whatever. But if you leave a space in between the colon and the zip code, it won't do anything. You got to make sure you don't put a space in there. It won't work. It's really bizarre. No ability to manually send an APRS beacon. So the FT5 will. This will not. You can set it to go as low as 10 seconds, beacon every 10 seconds, which would smoke your battery. But I can't go in and manually beacon. The mic placement is weird. It's right here. And if you're not careful, you can cover it up with your hand while you're trying to talk. You need to make sure you keep your hand away from that mic. It doesn't have a channel knob. All right. So if I want to change channels, I need to punch the channel in here. Or I need to use my up and down arrows. All right, to change my channels. And the front panel programming on this radio is not hard, but it's not as easy as some other radios are. It's a little bit cumbersome. Now, the nice thing is when you do it from the app on the phone, it's so easy. Like programming frequencies and repeaters and stuff in on the app on this thing is ridiculous. The app on this thing is so good. You can control every function of this radio from the app. Oh, another thing I didn't mention this will digipeat. You can turn this into an APRS digipeater, a standalone digi, which is awesome also. Okay, so like I said, those are probably my two favorite go anywhere, do anything, waterproof kind of radios. Now I have two more ham radios I want to talk about, and they are sort of twins. The first one is the Yaesu FT65R. Now, all the radios we're talking about here are 2 meter, 77 centimeter. I don't have any tri-band radios here. I do own tri-band radios, but they're not in my fleet of favorite radios. So these are all going to be 2 meter, 77 meter ham band radios. This has a great form factor. The size is great. It feels good in your hand. It's a nice radio. It is extremely legible. The screen is super crisp. It may not come across on camera, but the screen is super crisp, super clear. In direct sunlight, it is supremely readable. All right. It's dead simple to unlock. There's a special menu you go into, you enter a code, and it's out-of-band transmit unlocked. Easy to program. Just hit your menu button, pick what you want to do. You want to change your squelch type, you can go in and change your squelch type from in there. It's easy. This radio is easy to program. Now, we'll talk in a minute about the menu structure because that's a little weird, but it's easy to program. Robust build. This is a pretty tough little radio. Now, this is not waterproof. I think this is IP54, IP55, I don't remember. But it's a tough little radio. The price is awesome. It's like 100, and these are like 130, 140 bucks. And the speaker is very, very loud on this thing. So let me see if I can get a repeater to call me back. K2EJT testing. I might be able to do it with this little tiny antenna from here. K2EJT testing. Nah, it's not going to do with this little dummy load of an antenna. These little antennas don't transmit very well. And let me try a 2 meter or a 70 centimeter repeater and see if we can get it to work. That's 2 meters, 70 centimeters. K2EJT testing. It's not going to give us a repeat. I don't think it's going to identify itself. Let me see if it does. This thing's loud. There we go. Ooh. It is brutally loud. All right, so that's a good thing. Now, there's some drawbacks. This does not have a charging port on it. You've got to charge this via the cradle. All right, there is no channel tuning knob. I need to tune up and down either by punching the channels in or using the up and down arrows. The menu structure on this is a little weird. If you're used to something like a Baofeng, this is going to be a very different menu structure. So you push this menu button on the side, and they're in alphabetical order, which isn't a bad thing, but it is a different menu structure than what most people are going to be used to. Okay. And like I said, no IP67. It's not waterproof. All right. It's not dust proof. So that's something you need to think about. Now, its little brother, the FT4XR, very similar, almost identical radios. Just one is much smaller. All right. Now, there are both benefits and drawbacks to having the dinky little radio. So let's talk about them. All the advantages, everything you saw on the FT65, those are all the same, all right? But it's smaller. It's much smaller in your hand. So if you're looking for a little dinky, tiny radio you want to carry, this guy's fantastic. That sees a lot of time sort of just tossed in the pack and forgotten about. Now, there are some drawbacks on this one. The screen is not as good. So if you look at the font on this screen compared to the font on this screen, and we're on the same repeater, actually. All right. It's not, the font is not as easy to read. It's got sort of that weird digital funky looking font as where this one's super crystal clear. It's also a single line screen. This one is a 2-line screen. So you can see this is showing both our repeater name and our frequency. This one doesn't do that. All right. Other than that, everything I said about the FT65 goes for this radio, both strengths and weaknesses. You know, you need a charging cradle, all that kind of stuff. Super loud speaker, but no tuning knob. So any of the benefits of the FT65 this has, and all the drawbacks of the FT65 this has. Now the benefit over the FT65 is it's smaller. The drawback is the screen isn't quite as good. And obviously the battery life isn't going to be quite as good because the battery is physically smaller. All right. So those are my 4 ham radios that I sort of are my 4 go-to radios. If you see me out and about, I'm probably going to have one of those 4 radios on me. Now, let's talk about my 2 favorite GMRS radios. So the first one is going to be this Wouxun. This is the KG-UV9G Pro. Okay. This thing is a fantastic radio. So it is a super heterodyne receiver. The receiver in this thing is amazing. These are Chinese. All right. So, one thing about, let me talk real quick. Made in Japan. Made in China, made in Japan, made in China. I know that's weird because I've got 3 Yaesu radios here, but only 2 of them are Japanese made. And people tell you all the time, but these are all Chinese. It's not. I'll show you. If that's important to you, it's not to me. But if that's important to you, we'll go ahead and pull the battery off this FT65. Right there, it says made in Japan. Now, if I do the same thing on the FT4, look at the same thing, made in China. Okay, so the FT65 is Japanese, the FT4 is made in China. So again, if that's something that's important to you, that might be something to consider. For me, I don't care. It's the same radio. I don't care where it's made. It's made by Yaesu. So this is a super heterodyne receiver. Receiver's fantastic. It has dual knobs. So we've got a volume knob and a separate channel knob, which I love. It is USB-C on the battery. I also have a non-USB-C battery that needs the cradle. This is not a power delivery one though, okay? This one needs a standard Type A to Type C charging cable, which is kind of a pain. I can't really get that in frame, but so like I said, Type C, but it's not power delivery. All right. Excellent build quality. This thing's a durable, stout radio, but it is not waterproof. I think this is IP55, I think, if I remember correctly. Easy to program via the front panel. You go into your menu, and you've got all your sort of standard menu functions that you would expect to see. Very easy to program. All right. This receives lots of stuff. And when I say lots of stuff, this thing is programmed to hear an insane amount of stuff. Let me just scan through a few of the frequencies that are in this thing. So this radio is from Better Safe Radio, and they program it with all of the federal interoperability frequencies, local EMS, and police, although a lot of that stuff has gone to P25 phase 2 trunk stuff, right? But this is programmed in for like insane amounts of stuff. All right. So are there drawbacks? Yes. One of the big ones that I hate about this radio is it's got a parasitic draw. If you leave the battery on it, it draws the battery down. So if I'm going to store this for any length of time, the battery's coming off. Okay. I don't know if it's all of these radios or just mine, but that is something I need to consider. The screen is very hard to read in direct sunlight. Out of all the color, I just charged this full yesterday, and I haven't used it. And look, all right, I don't know if you saw that battery level, but it's already low. This screen is very hard to read in direct sunlight, like very hard to read. All right, so that is a drawback, and it's not IP67, but fantastic receiver, lots of features. All right, great radio. The last one I have here is another Wouxun. This is the KG-S88G. All right, this is my go-to GMRS radio when I'm out in the field. It's a super heterodyne receiver. It is IP67. Drop this thing in the water, don't care. This is my kayak radio. This thing is tough as nails. It is rugged. This thing's been dropped and beat up, and it looks brand new. It is small. So in comparison, here's the FT4. All right. Here's the FT65. So it's about the same size as the FT65. So it is a small radio. Super easy to read in the sun. All right, this screen is very legible, big font, super easy to read. And it's very easy to front panel program. I mean, it's dead simple to program this radio. All right. USB-C charging on the side, but it is not power delivery. Okay, you got to take this little port off. There's a little thumb screw you can put in here if you want to be able to take that off by hand. Remember, the doors have to be closed in order for this thing to be waterproof. And it has dual knobs. So it has a volume knob and a channel knob, which I am a fan of. Drawbacks. The only real drawback to this radio is it's UHF only. This will only receive UHF, which means I can receive all the GMRS frequencies, and I can receive like 440 ham. This will not do NOAA weather radio. It won't do FM radio. All of these other radios, these will all receive like FM broadcast radio, NOAA weather. All of them will, including this guy, all right? The only radio I have here that won't is this one. That's really the only drawback with this radio, is it's just a UHF radio. But for its intended use, a waterproof, rugged, small GMRS radio, it is outstanding. All right, so those are the 6 radios that I personally like overall. Everything. I own a pile of HTs. There's probably 10 more behind me in my closet. But the FT5DR, the VGC VR-N76, the Yaesu FT65, the Yaesu FT4XR. Scooch this guy down so we got a little more room on the camera here, so we can fit all our radios in frame. Our Wouxun KG-UV9G Pro, and last but not least, our Wouxun KG-S88G. So those are the 5 radios that I personally, when I go out to pick a radio, it's probably going to be one of these. Most of the time, it's this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. Those are ones I carry the most. I carry the FT65 sometimes I've got a spare battery for this. So if I'm going to be going away for, a couple of days and I want a radio that the batteries in these things last forever. These are kind of battery hogs. These last for days and days and days. So a lot of times I'll take the FT65 with the spare battery and the MobiLink TNC4 so I can do APRS. But generally speaking, like I said, those are the radios that you're going to see me carry the vast majority of the time in the field. So I just figured I would talk a little bit about what I think is important in a radio and why I like these radios over all the other radios that I own. So if you got any questions, want to know anything about these radios, have any concerns, anything like that, and want to know more about any of these radios or any of the other radios that I own, go ahead and leave me a comment below. Other than that, thank you everybody for watching. I really do appreciate it. And as always, until next time, 7-3.